Working from home has blurred the line between work and life. While some people thrive working from home, others find it difficult not to work all the time. So how do you achieve work-life balance? Is there even such a thing? What works for one person does not necessarily work for another. Your personality and season of life will influence your ideal work-life balance. Listen in as Janine and I discuss what work-life balance looks like for each of us and how you can determine what work-life balance should look like for you. This episode is full of creative tips you can use to achieve your ideal work-life balance when working from home. Welcome to the Stay at Home Nurse Podcast. I'm your host, Deanna Cooper Gillingham. For over 25 years, I've strived to use my nurse credentials to find work that fit my lifestyle. Whether it was raising my 4 children and 3 fur babies, traveling the world, or moving to Mexico and living on the Caribbean Sea. Sometimes I succeeded and sometimes I failed, but I always learned from the experience. Now, I want to help you by sharing what worked and what didn't work. There are so many opportunities out there for nurses today. The Stay at Home Nurse Podcast will inspire and equip you to have a nursing career that is meaningful and supports your lifestyle. Now let's get started.
So Deanna and I are here today to talk about work-life balance. And is there such a thing? Where do we start there? I think I'm going to give my opinion that there isn't a thing. There isn't a thing between work and a life balance, in my opinion. I used to think there was. I used to be like, okay, work and then life. And that was definitely when I was at the hospital. You go to work, you forget your life for a little while, and then you come home, and then there's life because you just worked 3 in a row, and there's dishes, and there's laundry, and there's all those things. So now you have your life to worry about. Now you don't have to go back to work for another 3 days or whatever. So definitely in my nursing job, I had the work and the life. Was it balanced? Absolutely not. How about you, Dia?
Well, this is such a broad topic to unpack, but I have to agree with you. When I worked in the hospital, there was much more separation of work and life. Then when I went to work from home as a case manager, I had to purposefully set up, like we had to be in a separate office and we had to lock the door because we had patient files. So just like thinking about HIPAA, we had to, even though you worked from home, you had the same things to worry about. So at the end of the day, I never had a problem. I know a lot of people did have a problem with work-life balance because they'd go back at the end of the day and they'd check a few emails or want to get things ready for the next day. But I walked out the door, locked it, hid my key, and I was done. I never went back in until the next day when my shift started. So I really was very purposeful with separating that. But when I started my business, there was no separation whatsoever. I could be having dinner with my friends and answering an email, making dinner for the kids and listening to a podcast. There was no work-life balance whatsoever. So I don't know. Let's talk about this because I've gone back and forth about should there be work-life balance as an entrepreneur? Should there not be? What are you doing now? And is it working?
So I think you're definitely right. Like, I think the problem is with a lot of entrepreneurs, we love our businesses as much as our life, and it can be hard to stop working. We have these like workaholic tendencies in a sense that you do have to like put yourself back in check sometimes. So what am I doing? Well, with my business, I kind of have a little bit of set hours right now that I work because the kids are in school. My husband works a 9 to 5. It kind of flows that way. And I carve out time during the day for myself to work out and make dinner and whatnot. So I don't feel like I have problem with separation of work and life because it just works really nice right now. Where it gets messy for me is the summertime. Any breaks with the kids or anything like that is where I'm like, oh, okay, what do I do now? But we've kind of perfected it, and it didn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen within one summer. But what we do, we take our mornings, and our mornings are my work time. So the kids know that's their time to do their work. My youngest, he does some little like activities school related. And then my oldest does whatever he does. I don't know. He's 17. So what does he do? No, but when he was younger, we did the same thing. He would have to do some sort of school related activity. And as we move on now, it's easy for me to say, okay, so in the morning we do our thing, we get stuff done. And then in the afternoons, that is total playtime because we have a pool now. It's summertime. The sun's hot. We're going swimming. We're riding bikes. We're doing all of that stuff. And that's where I feel like, okay, now at nighttime, when my husband comes home, I usually pick up and do a little bit of more work in the evening because I don't have the full days like I do when they're in school. So that's how I do it. And going back to what we've said in prior episodes, getting up early, and I get those 2, sometimes 3 in the summer hours before they even wake up to be able to fit in my work, that it never feels like I'm working all the time. How about you, Deanna? What do you do?
Well, I've made many changes as far as like different things that I've tried. So when I started my business, it was all work, all work. And then we moved to Mexico and the book was complete, everything was done, and it was all play. And it was boring as heck. And I'm the type of person, and there are a lot of people like me, you might be like this, that you just need to do something productive. I like to create something. So creating a book, creating a course, creating a system, creating a process. I just need to create something. And so for me, I needed to do something. I needed to be productive. But then I went back into the workaholic mode. So recently, this is something I've been struggling with for a long time. So that's why I say, is there work-life balance? Should there be work-life balance? Should lines cross? Should they not cross? So I guess the question is, when is it a problem? Honestly, I think if it's working for you to mix work and life or to not mix work and life and keep them separate, it's okay as long as it's not a problem. So recently, I've had times where I've worked 60-hour weeks, but then I've taken 2 weeks off because we've had friends down here, family down here. We've had a lot. We knew that the first 6 months of 2022, when this is being recorded, was going to be a very busy life for us, very life heavy. So during those days when it's not life heavy, it becomes work heavy, and it's okay. Janine and I actually, she's on vacation, but the other day she spent about an hour working and I spent about an hour working. We were just like getting stuff done. It was fun stuff that we had wanted to do. It wasn't like we hated it or dreaded it, but it was like, hey, we can kind of sit here and look at the ocean and get a little bit of work done. So is that work-life balance? I mean, we're working when we're supposed to technically be off and on vacation, but it works for us. So Janine, you're on vacation. What do you think?
I think another thing that I've had to do over the years, and this is no fault of anyone in my household but me, I should have put up the boundaries sooner, because just like talking to my family that's outside of my house, and my family's all within like a 10-minute radius, and we have lots of siblings. So there's always someone lurking around. So, and nobody really knows what Janine does. They know I work online, but they don't really know what I do. Even though I've explained it to them, like still they don't get it because they don't know, and whatever, it's fine. But what I do need to always remind them is that I am working. And there was a lot of times that I felt guilty working because they wanted to come hang out or whatever in the middle of the day. And it was hard for me to say, no, like I have to work, even though my heart wants to hang out with you. I need to get some stuff done. And the other side of it is the people inside of my household and knowing when mom is working. And even my husband, when I was first starting the business and growing the business before there was a lot of money, he would just kind of go, what are you doing? Like, you're working, like never ask me the money question, but like would kind of get a little bit annoyed. Like, what are you doing? And I just had to bluntly say to him, I am working just like you work. You go to work, I need to go to work. And that's kind of the conversation we had to have. And ever since then, it's been just fine.
I think that brings up some really good points there. So I've had that issue because people want to come visit. And it's like, we have to balance having visitors here. And we just can't have people here 24/7, 365 days a year because we do need to work. And even, this is going to sound crazy, but we lived on a first floor condo where we had a lot of friends, and we were right along the path that you had to go from the pool to anywhere else. So everybody walked by, and we have, where we live, there are some people that are here all year round, but then there are people who just come for a couple weeks or a couple months out of the year. So we might not see them except for once or twice a year, and they come back in town and they come and they sit down with me on my patio where I'm working with my computer, and they don't realize, I'm like, I know you're only here for 2 weeks, but somebody here was for 2 weeks before you, and somebody's going to be here for 2 weeks after you. And I really need to get some work done. It's funny because the people that live here full time, they'd walk by and they'd like put blinders over their eyes, like pretend like they didn't see me. And I just giggle because they knew I was working and they respected that. But not everybody understood that. And the same thing with my family. Like, they don't understand what I do. They just don't understand. So for them, if they see that you're home, they think that you're in the life part, and they don't understand that you might be doing the work part from home. Now, I will say I had a little transition, because when I did case management from home and I was like working certain hours, I had to let my neighbors, different neighborhood, but like, I can't watch your kids after school. I can't go run up to there to pick them up because I'm working and I'm clocked in. And it was a little bit hard for them to understand. I can't get your mail, when the UPS man comes, they can't be delivering something because I might be on a call. And so there was a little bit, but so that kind of eased me into the, wow, people think because you're home that you're not working.
Well, then also I just had this conversation with you recently about, the busing is going to change for my one son. And as the mom, you want to just do everything. And I was like, I'm going to drive into school and pick him up, when essentially I do need to pick him up for time restrictions on other commitments we have, but I don't need to drive him every day. I can send him out to a bus stop. And that's really hard for me to let go, because I'm like, but I'm home, but I'm not, because now the schedule's different. He actually starts later. I pick him up earlier. I'm losing my time of during the day to work. So I'm letting that go. I'm letting the free bus that is safe for children, come and get him every morning, and it's going to be just fine. But it's a hard thing to do. So how like you said, you had different parts. You had to have those hard conversations with neighbors or friends or family. And what the people inside my household, how I made them realize that I don't always believe in that work-life balance, and that it is one, is to make them part of the business in some way. So we were laughing last night, we were sitting here after dinner, and we were playing our podcasts out loud to each other, laughing because we hate listening to ourselves. But my boys, they're the opening of my podcast, and they just think that is so cool. And then Adam's the end of it. So like, you just involve them that way, or just ask. My husband's really good financially, so he set up my accounts. He tells me what I need to do for different things. He's involved that way. And the boys, anything that they can possibly do to help, they're like all about it. So you just involve them, and then they realize, oh, she is doing things. It's not just a laptop that opens up and money comes out of it.
Yeah. And some things that I did was, actually, we moved to the fourth floor, because people don't just walk by the fourth floor. And I know that sounds extreme, but it worked. It worked. And Avi is part of my business. Like, we are 50-50 partners in this business. He handles website, he handles finances, he pays everybody, he does payroll. So he understands that this is truly a business. And my mother, we actually had my mother working for a while until she had her stroke in the business. And she was doing, well, actually, until she came down here to visit us for 3 months, because she was doing my fulfillment. So when somebody ordered the book, she would send it out and mail it from her little mailbox. Actually, we got her the biggest mailbox you've ever seen. She's like, oh my gosh, you could deliver a toddler in that thing, so that she could put a bunch of books in there and mail them out and not have to go to the post office. But like, she got involved because she really does not understand what I do. She doesn't even have a smartphone. So this whole online world is so foreign to her, but she knows that I do something, and she knows it's important, and she knows that books get sent out, and that's enough.
And I'm laughing over here, across from Deanna, because the one thing I've done, and I'm hoping my family members outside of my household don't hear this podcast, but if they do, just know that Janine is always home. The car is just in the garage.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that. So So we all have our little ways of dealing with it, whether it's moving to a fourth story where people don't walk by you or putting your car in the garage. So yes, one other thing I would really like to touch on really quickly is the way that you've gotten your kids involved and your husband involved. Because for me, it's a little bit different because obviously a business partner, but you don't have your kids as or your husband is necessarily a partner. So how does that work? Like you just, hey, I want you to work for free, or like just tell me how that works.
Oh yeah, free labor, 100%. It's a lot of things I ran by them. So if I'm writing copy on my website, I will print it out and the family will sit down. I'll go, okay, how's this sound? And I love it because they're not me and they have no idea really what I'm talking about. So they really have their own statement on everything, like how they feel about it. So I've changed a lot of things based on what they've said. And then my youngest he doesn't need to be told to like do anything in the business. If he sits next to me and I tell him to make a list of things of like something that I already wrote out, he just needs to copy it down. He thinks he is just helping so much. So, not much there. And then the oldest, he's actually going into digital media. So I made him just to even help him. I said, start doing this stuff, start learning this program. This is what I use. You're going to use it in school or whatever. So that's really helpful for him. And then Adam with the finance and stuff, he actually found my tax guy because he's one of his clients at the bank and he works a small business. So he was able to hook me up with him, but really Adam and him are just really good buddies. So I'll just say, yeah, can you ask him this? And he'll go, oh yeah, and be able to answer my questions. So, and Adam's really good with just telling me where the money needs to go sometimes if I'm confused on things. So again, free labor, all free labor.
Well, I really love this conversation and I love this topic. And I love how you're able to even give even whether you have young kids, my kids are all older now, so it's different. Although I get my son, now that he's older and graduated, I pay him, but like he edits the podcast episodes and he puts the intros and outros in and he does all of that. Now, because he's older, I feel like, he's graduated high school, he gets paid for this. But yeah, I think involving them in it is really, it's important for them to know that this is not fun. It is a business. And when you can take them on vacation with the money that you earn, somehow that was like something that like a switch that I think went off for my family. How about you?
Oh, for sure. 100%. 100%. Like now they're seeing the reaps of the labor, right? That it does pay off when you work really hard. So I think action steps from this episode. I think the first one I would say, when you start your business or you're running your business, if you haven't done this already, learn from me, set boundaries from the start with your people inside your house. Start there. How about you, Deanna?
Yeah, I love the idea of boundaries because no matter how much we want to mix our life and our business, or how much, like we said, it's when it's a problem, that's when you've gone too far. But no matter how much we want to do it, you do need to set boundaries. And your boundaries do not have to be the same as somebody else's. Your boundary might be that once your kids come home from school, you don't look at your phone or you don't have the apps. Like one of my boundaries was to turn off the notifications for my business email so that I wasn't seeing them at all hours of the night and feeling like I needed to respond, even though I didn't. And you know what? When I don't see them till the next morning, it's perfectly fine. Nobody dies.
That's a good point. Not just like boundaries on your family members, but boundaries on yourself to make that work-life balance, in a sense, one life. So you're not always working and there's going to be times, is what I've noticed in my business. Like I try to stop working by like 3:30 in the afternoon, because that's when my kids are home and that's when we have other things to be focused on. But I have a client in Hawaii. So like we have to remember that they sleep in Hawaii. So I need to adjust things. So like I do have a meeting on Fridays with her and that's it. That's my one meeting and that's fine. But then the other thing to add to that is like there's sometimes I do a webinar and I know people are working till 7:30 at night. So it has to be at 8 o'clock or 8:30. And every once in a while I'll have to do that. So I think another action step to take away from this is to put an ideal work week onto paper for yourself and just know that it's an ideal work week. And sometimes it strays and that's okay, but that's helping you set boundaries for yourself to know this is when I should be working and this is when my family needs to be in my life. But know that your business is a fluid thing that goes with your life.
Yeah. And I think another action step is to really decide how important certain things are to you. Like if family mealtime is a non-negotiable, then you decide that you will have no meetings during this time. If it's something where, it's not that big of a deal, then it's okay. Like for me, it's not a big deal. It's me and Abby. We can have meals whenever we want. It's not a big deal if I decide to schedule a call or a meeting during a certain time, but you have to decide for you. So think about, what are your non-negotiables? Do you not want to get anything on the weekend? Do you not want to get anything before a certain time? Just think about, like, what are your non-negotiables? And when you do that, then you know where those boundaries should be. Set boundaries around them.
I think that's it. I think that's a wrap.
All right.
I hope this episode helps you to achieve work-life balance, especially when working from home. Please share it with a friend or colleague who you feel would benefit from hearing this episode. Adios from Puerto Aventuras, Mexico.